Chris Lynch with ePark Canterbury. Park at 264 Russell Road and go in the draw to win a trip to Samoa. eParkcanterbury.co.nz.
David Seymour, New Zealand Acting Prime Minister, is with me now. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Chris.
Nice to see you. First of all, Ministry of Justice wants to slash 178 roles. You're the party of law and order. Is this a step in the right or wrong direction, and why is this happening?
Well, first of all, it's happening because the previous government hired a huge number of people, 18,000 additional public servants, not frontline people, but public servants, and actually managed to get worse results. For example, law and order, if you look at the likelihood of a New Zealander being victimised, that actually went up about 30% over the last 5 years, even as they hired more people to supposedly do something about it. So I think first and foremost, we've got to separate the idea that throwing money at a problem and hiring people for a problem is the same as solving it. Then we've got to look at, well, okay, what do we actually need to do? We need more places to send criminals, so we are building more prison capacity for adult and youth offenders alike. You need to have a clear instruction to the judges to actually send them there, so we will be reforming the Sentencing Act to make clear that people should be getting tougher sentences. And we're stopping the public funding of cultural reports or Section 27 reports, which are frankly sob stories for convicted criminals after they're convicted, $5,000 of taxpayer money to explain why it's not really their fault and they should get a lighter sentence. That stops too. And then we're amping up the number of police on the beat. So, yes, we are removing people from the Ministry of Justice, just like most of the public service became bloated under Labor, but we are changing the rules to get the right values in place and then putting the resource where it will make the most difference to people on a day-to-day basis.
If you're going to be getting additional prisons and youth justice facilities, don't you need to staff those, though?
Well, that's absolutely true, but they're not staffed by people from the Ministry of Justice. They would be staffed by prison guards from corrections. We may well see fewer people working in the head office of corrections, but if that is made up for by more prison guards who are better trained and more able to maintain safety in prisons, then I think most people will be pretty approving of that.
I want to move on to, you tweeted, and I want the public to know exactly what you tweeted several days ago now, and I quote, "Here's my challenge to the media. If you want to regain the trust of New Zealanders, stop applying a double standard to the Maori Party and start calling out their behaviour like you would for any other political party." Mr. Seymour, what do you mean by that? That's quite a telling statement.
Well, I just give you some of the things that have occurred in recent days that have been reported by some media outlets, but not by the big ones that you'd be most familiar with. I'm talking about Māori Waititi making a video peering through the windows of the Beehive at some ministers having a meeting and describing it as the quote-unquote white government having a white budget meeting. Now, none of that is true. In particular, this government has 7 out of 20 members of cabinet with Maori heritage. But even if it wasn't, so what? Since when did a person's race matter so much? We've had a video by their chief of staff which makes a series of, incitements for people to rise up, have a revolution, do whatever the F they want once they realise their power, with some quite disturbing imagery surrounding it. And yet, both of those incidents have had only marginal reporting. And now there's these allegations around use of census data and Ministry of Health data and resources for electoral purposes around a marae in Auckland, in South Auckland, that again has had mixed reporting. I mean, credit where it's due to Andrea Vancett's stuff for breaking the story. And so I just simply make the point that if other parties were to do similar things, I'm sure they would be all over it. However, for some reason, and it's quite tragic really, Te Pāti Māori hold themselves to a lower standard and are held to a lower standard by mainstream media. I think people can sense that, and they no longer believe that they're really journalists who report without fear or favour.
I know the state broadcaster One News hasn't touched the story on the Māori Party, which I find peculiar and somewhat odd. What do you say?
Well, I'm, as Associate Minister of Finance, a shareholding minister in TVNZ, and I'm
so you've got to be careful what you say.
I'm forbidden from commenting on their editorial positions, but I'm sure that people can see what news organisations choose to run and not run. And of course, once people get the sense that there are stories out there they've heard about on one outlet, but curiously not on another, they've got every right to ask themselves, why is that?
It is strange. I want to go back to this other situation where I know you're aware, you just mentioned it, of this inflammatory social media video posted by Kiri Tamahiri Waititi, the wife of the Maori Party co-leader Rawiri Waititi, suggesting overthrowing the government because they're, quote, trying to get rid of us. What do you make of that video, given the fact that it was the SIS or the former SIS chief executive suggesting anybody who has radical ideas about overthrowing governments or politically radical ideas must be looked at quite closely. But yet the media seems to have turned a blind eye to that video, which, to be fair, is vile.
Well, I believe it is vile, and it is, again, is this curious double standard, which actually erodes people's faith in institutions when they see different treatment for similar actions by different people. So again, I just call on anybody who says that they are in favour of a civilised society where people talk to each other respectfully and try to persuade each other of better ideas, to say, well, we don't want anything to do with that. And by the way, I think it's really important to recognise that they may call themselves the Maori Party. They don't represent Maori. They don't represent me or Karen Chua or Nicole McKee, ACT MPs with Maori heritage. More and more Maori people saying, we're just actually sick of this. It's embarrassing for them to try and use our background to advance their political cause. And I think it's important for non-Maori to realise that this is not, people speaking on behalf of Maori. It's some quite unusual and really ultimately quite odd people who happen to be Maori. And finally, my message to Pāti Māori is they're going to step back and ask themselves a simple question. If our ideas for the future of New Zealand are so good, why can't we just persuade other people of it normally? And if our ideas aren't that good, is it really worth destroying the norms and the civility of our society to try and advance them?
The Human Rights Commission has refused to condemn the video that I speak of. Instead, they issued a statement to us, a general statement on law. Mr. Seymour, doesn't this suggest this is a highly subjective agency with possible bias?
Well, my criticisms of the Human Rights Commission go back a long way and are pretty well known. And it's no secret ACT would rather see it gone. However, it's also true that the government that we're a part of has said it would like to continue with the Human Rights Commission. I certainly hope that we'll see new commissioners. There's currently a vacancy there, but new commissioners appointed who actually have a genuine commitment to universal human rights. And if they're going to have this role as a sort of critic and conscience, which the Human Rights Act does give them, then they need to execute that role without fear or favour.
The Human Rights Commission appears to have gone hard left. You've got two CEOs now with shared responsibilities, one that appears to be European, the other one that appears to be Māori. They're going down this divisive road already, aren't they? It's crystal clear to anybody with a brain.
Well, there's a lot of people in Wellington and beyond, particularly in the public service, who have bought into this interpretation of the treaty that it's a partnership between races. One of the reasons why ACT is advancing the Treaty Principles Bill is that we need to reject that reasonably modern and recent interpretation of the treaty. It's really only emerged since 1987, and that interpretation is incompatible with a free and democratic society where each person has an equal opportunity to flourish and succeed in their own way.
Just finally, youth crime appears to be trending upwards lately, particularly with first-time offenders. You're the Law and Order Party man, so to speak. What are you going to do to solve this issue? I know you've spoken in the past about getting tough on crime and youth gangs. Just last night here, Chris Lynch Media was reporting that 5 teenagers aged between, 14 and 16 years of age were caught by police trying to steal cars in central Christchurch at a reasonable hour. When I say reasonable, about 10 p.m. in front of people. They're getting more and more confident as to what they do, and yet what are we doing about it?
Well, first of all, in terms of the data and the idea that it's rising, there's been a lot of headlines that I would say are misleading. They've said that youth crime is on the rise, but what they were actually reporting is some recent data that actually only goes up to June last year. So that data tells us that it certainly did rise through the beginning of last year right up to June. They haven't actually published more recent data, but putting that aside, that doesn't really help for people who are victims right now and witnessing the kind of events you describe. I believe we have a serious problem. The solution is going to have more young serious offender booths as ACT campaigned on. That will happen. The National Party call them boot camps. You can call them what you like, but the point is there needs to be a place to put people. Otherwise, the police are just paying tag and release. The next thing is you've got to actually get more children going to school, because the one thing that nearly every youth offender has in common is that they are disengaged from the school system, and so school attendance, that is a serious focus of the government, and I've at different times rolled out different strategies that the government is taking.
We'll leave it there. New Zealand Acting Prime Minister. For how many days are you the Acting Prime Minister for, by the way?
Oh, well, I think I started on Wednesday. It depends exactly on when certain other people's planes left. And I'm scheduled to be there through to Friday night, although I think Chris Luxon's coming back on the Air Force plane, so who knows, I might get an extra few days.
Do you get the Prime Minister credit card to go with it or something? Some extra perks?
No, that's been put away. Jacinda had it and Chris Hitkins had it, and we're all up for about $100 billion. So, the minimum payments got pretty high, and so we've had to actually cut the Prime Ministerial credit card up because, frankly, Kiwis are doing it, tough as it is, without the government going on that kind of rampage.
David Seymour, nice to speak with you. Thanks so much for your time tonight.
No problem. Thank you.